Hello, this is ASEAN Movie Pulse interview. I am here with Ed Lejano, Artistic Director of QCinema Festival. Hello.
Hello, nice to be
Uh,
here.
okay, nice to meet you too. So let us begin with the question. So you have shared Filipino cinema from a number of roles. You are director, producer, actor, and director of the Philippines Film Institute. In your experience, how would you describe Filipino cinema to someone who doesn't know anything about it, let's say?
Well, Philippine cinema is one of the most vibrant um, film industries in Southeast Asia. It's a area within outside of East Asia, and together with Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. So we're in a good spot. For the last 2 decades, Philippine cinema has been recognized globally through our uh, Filipino tours, like Love Diaz, um, Eric Mati, and all that. And, like other film industries, it has its ups and downs. Like Hong Kong cinema was so big in the 80s and 90s, and now it's just a whimper from what it was. Philippine cinema had its peaks, and recent developments have also affected it. So maybe we will go to that in that direction. But yes, Philippine cinema is a unique um, lens to see our culture, how Filipinos are, and we have a funky lens for which we see the world. Sometimes it has uh, Asian influences, a bit of Spanish or Hispanic, a lot of Hollywood, kind of Catholic or Christian. So it's all this amalgam of influences. Even LGBT is quite um, a vibrant element in our cinema. So it's a nice. If it's a cuisine, it's very fusion,
Mhm.
not confusion. Fusion of many flavors.
Okay, okay. And do you have a rough estimate of how many movies per year are being produced nowadays in the Philippines?
In pre-pandemic times, it used to be around 200 feature films.
Mhm, mhm.
And of course, the pandemic all changed all those figures. Now it's sad to say, but most of the films being released now are straight to streaming. Since our theaters opened last November, no Filipino film has opened in theaters. They just go to the local streaming platforms. Of course, Hollywood has returned with a bang, but Filipinos haven't gone back to the theaters like it was before, except for Spider-Man and Batman. For all other titles,
Mhm.
the few times I've been to the theaters, it's lucky if we have 10 people in the audience. So
Oh, really?
Filipinos still have to get that habit of going back to the theaters in the post-pandemic era.
Mhm, mhm. But before the pandemic, people went to see Filipino movies in the cinemas?
Oh yes, especially for Hollywood tentpole titles, the Marvel superhero films. When they open in a multiplex, all 10 theaters will show all those same titles, to get a quick buck. Um, for Filipino titles, rom-com movies with popular young actors, actresses are the usual staple for Filipino cinema. A little bit of action, a little bit of um, horror, but rom-com used to be the main staple. And yes, there were a lot of box office hits, but even before the pandemic, there has been a steady decline in audiences, brought about by Netflix and other platforms and, torrents,
Yeah,
so to speak.
yeah, okay. And what would you say are the most important changes the industry has experienced through the years?
Um, well, funding is, of course, crucial in a film production. Um, there has been uh, major directors have been reaching out to foreign funding agencies, like HBO or Netflix, who have started making line productions, and that makes a big difference in their budgets. For films like Missing Eight, the Eric Mati movie that premiered in Venice. It was a series, but there was a theatrical 3-hour version. Um, some other directors have reached out to those global funding agencies like Love Diaz. So there is a global perspective now in terms of how films should be made and not just rely on local funding, because sometimes it can be very mainstream if we depend on producers from our local industry. But in the main, for the last 10 years, film festivals like QCinema were instrumental in producing independent productions by new directors. So that was a good and quite unique um, development in the film industry. That's why there were a lot of films that have gone to the festival circuit and introduced new Filipino directors because of this funding grants being given by our film festivals. But then again, the pandemic changed all that.
Mhm, mhm. But in general, are you optimistic about the future of Filipino cinema?
Well, generally speaking, I think the global film situation is still adjusting to what will become the new normal. So, what's happening here in the Philippines? People are still not gone back to the habit of going back to the theaters, watching movies on the big screen. So um, it's a challenge to tell everybody that it's safe to go back and this is the place to go to immerse yourself in the beauty of what cinema can offer. So um, the prospects for the Filipino film industry is, I think, for the near term, they would continue to produce films for the streaming platforms, and then eventually um, go back into theatrical.
Mhm, mhm. But does the revenue that comes from screening your film to Netflix, let's say, or all those platforms, is it similar with the revenue that came from cinema tickets, let's say, or are the money much less or more?
Oh, it's a lot more money. If Netflix or HBO produces a production, it's Hollywood standard of funding. So yes, it's a big plus to have uh, a local director being produced by a global streaming platform. So yes, the budget's very good. Locally, budgets here are quite low because they only think of the local audience. And so, and of course, the new realities of testing before the shoot. And then now they have to lock in the cast and the crew when they're shooting a film. So it drives up the expenses and making it harder for producers to recoup their investment because of all these additional expenses needed to produce a film.
Okay, okay. So on the personal question, you have not directed the film for some years. Are those days in the past for you?
No, I have a project hoping to shoot next year, but it's also hard to juggle many roles, like sometimes I'm a jury in a festival, I'm a festival director, I'm a film professor. So, it's hard to have a work-life balance, and it takes to do a film production right. You need at least 6 months or a year to put everything, put all your efforts in to do it right. Hopefully in the coming months, I'll have more time for that.
Okay, okay. But do you ever get tired doing all those things?
Well, sometimes I feel like, why do I breathe? Cinema. But I try to have a work-life balance. I also watch silly films sometimes, guilty pleasures. And, it can be lonely just watching screeners on your computer screen, as you well know.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes you just have to enjoy certain films that are not always art house titles.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so you were producer in Glen Barit's Cleaners, which I thought was one of the most interesting movies I have seen the latest years. Can you give us some details about that film, Cleaners?
I'm so glad to hear that you were able to saw the film, because that was produced just before the pandemic, and it did not go around as it should because of what happened. But yes, it's an extremely low budget movie. Glen Barit, who used to be my film student, he envisioned it as a do-it-yourself production using Xerox images. And the funding that we gave for his QCinema project was just, was quite limited. So he needed to find other producers to complete his project within a certain time frame. And all the other producers loved the concept, but they were hesitant to if he can pull it off. They were saying, what? Xerox images? Hand drawn? This is they found it very risky. And yet he was very principled. No, I will do this the way I want it, with non-actors, and we were solidly behind him, but we were just afraid that the funding that we gave will not be enough, and he turned down all the other prospects for other funding, and he just did it with what little budget we gave him, and that's what he came up with. And when I first saw it, I said, wow, he pulled it off. And I hope it can still go around and be seen by other foreign film fans.
Okay, okay. And can you tell me a bit about the Metro Manila Film Festival? Why did you stop being involved with that? And then how did QCinema started?
Okay. Metro Manila Film Festival is a unique festival here in the Philippines. It's held during the Christmas, New Year holiday period. So it's a very lucrative period, and the festival is very mainstream. They try to get very commercial movies, but there was an attempt to make it more like a true festival and make it kind of more independent. So we were invited to be there, but the committee of Metro Manila Film Festival is dominated by theater owners and mainstream producers. So despite our efforts to inject some changes to make it like a real festival, we were our inputs were not really uh, well. It wasn't really implemented, so we were better off not being part of it anymore.
Mhm, mhm. And about QCinema, how did that festival started?
QCinema is now on its 10th year.
Mhm,
So I was there from the very beginning. I was just asked to attend the workshop for QCinema, and in the months that followed, I was like, oh, they chose me as festival director. And so, okay, I'll take this challenge. And we started small. We would produce a few feature films and make it into a small exhibition type of festival. And then we slowly expanded to have a real competition with feature films that we produce. We also produce short films and some documentaries. And of course, we started bringing in international titles, fresh from Cannes, fresh from Berlin. We we put up a competition section, Asia Next Wave, which is for new emerging Southeast Asian directors that proved very successful. We even had a section on LGBT. It's called Rainbow QC. We had it's like a major festival. We had different sections, even midnight. So we were trying to have an image or a branding that is very welcoming to new Asian directors, and films that are edgy or can be controversial. And yeah, so it's been quite a journey for us for this past 10 years. And uh, I hope it's making a difference, because some people call us the best festival in the Philippines and one of the leading festivals in Southeast Asia.
mhm, mhm. Well, what would you say is the purpose of the festival? Let's just say the general purpose of the festival.
The purpose, Quezon City, which is the largest city in the Philippines, is where a lot of movie and television studios are located. It's like Hollywood. So it's a perfect fit for Quezon City to come up with a festival to promote filmmaking activities in the city. And true to that vision, uh, we've done much more than that. So we produced our own competition films. Initially, we we made it into a venue to watch the latest world cinema titles and promote the newest Asian auteurs. So it's like giving back, the city giving back to its constituents and to film lovers out here, that this is where they can watch all these things.
Mhm, mhm. And what are okay, you mentioned some of the benefits of having the festival in Q City. Are there any negative things of having the festival there?
uh, Nowhere in the Philippines or in the platform can they watch films like Drive My Car, Worst Person in the World, um, uh, Wheel of Fortune, and the Hamaguchi films. Every year, we bring these films here. Our art house circuit is not that like in Bangkok or in Europe or in even in Singapore. So it's pretty much dependent on festivals like QCinema to be able to bring this um titles to film lovers here. Uh, the cons, maybe
Okay.
well, one of the cons, we still don't have a theater venue like that in Busan. So we have proposed to have that kind of structure where our local audiences can watch all these wonderful foreign films, Filipino films, the whole year round without censorship. And that's a continuing goal we'd like to have. And maybe more funding so that we can produce inter-Asian productions, like co-productions between the Philippines and some of our Southeast Asian neighbors. So that's one of our targets as well, to be right now, to be able to reach out to a more wider circuit. You need to have you need to collaborate with other funding agencies and with other countries. So these are things that we are planning to do in the near future.
And can you give us some details about the group that works the festival, that handles the festival?
Okay. We have a small, lean and mean team behind QCinema. I'm the festival director. And we used to be a two-man programming team, but because of the pandemic, it's been me.
Okay.
Yes, but when we have a call for entries for scripts to produce, we have a selection committee made up of filmmakers, critics, artists. So we have that to read all the scripts, we make our selection, and we also have a monitoring committee to check when those films are being produced or being shot, if the budget is doing okay and it's being followed and things are doing okay according to their timetable. So come festival time, we have a PR team, social media team, we have volunteers. So it's like many other festivals, we rely on a structure, an organizational structure, to be able to make it work. And especially during the challenging times of during the pandemic, we had to do streaming and theatrical, because even in 2020, we never stopped. We even had theatrical on-site screenings during the height of the pandemic, but this was in a semi-outdoor venue. And we started with streaming with we had a partner upstream, where we streamed another program just for streaming. In 2021, last year, we were the first, maybe in Southeast Asia, but definitely first in the Philippines, to do face-to-face physical screenings. But we started small. We only had one cinema, and we were like a guinea pig. We were the experiment of the film industry. And thank God, people went to our theaters, to our screenings, and both streaming and theatrical. So our bold experiment, thank God, worked. Nothing happened. No pandemic cases or super spreader events. We even had a lot of festival receptions, first time in 2 years. And so I'm just so glad that this year, for this 2022, we're going to be almost normal.
Almost normal, yeah. That's a good title now. Yes. Okay, and regarding the films that you program, are there any certain criteria that you search for in the movies that you screen in the festival?
Well, it depends on the sections, but in Screen International, we program the best of the best. You know, those that receive the Palme d'Or or the Lion Award winners or the Berlinale major winners. So it's always a toss-up between the big titles from Berlin, Sundance, Cannes, Venice, sometimes from Locarno. That's for our one section, Screen International. We have Asia Next Wave, which is the newest auteurs from Southeast Asia, and we've been happy to have shown great award-winning films from Singapore. Uni was one of the films we showed last year from Indonesia. The edgy directors from Vietnam. I think there's something happening in Vietnam now in the indie in the independent sphere. So a lot of horror, violent movies, quite exciting. So yes, and we showed Memoria last year. We're also open to LGBT titles. For Southeast Asia, which is more conservative, doing this is quite distinctive enough for the Philippines. And also shorts. This year we're producing a new batch of Filipino shorts. So I'm just wondering if you were able to see our short film program from last year. I can give you a screener.
Please do. Please do. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And also, you have QCinema is up since 2013, right?
Yes.
So any memorable events, like best memories from the festival?
Oh, yes, quite a few. This was the time when Gaspar Noe had a film, Love 3D.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my last minute selection, and I didn't finish the film. I only saw the trailer, so I programmed it right away. I didn't preview it, and then during its very first screening, 3D, I had guests from the government and from the foreign embassies, ambassadors, and when the movie started, there was a. If you're familiar with the movie,
Yeah.
I didn't know it was an art house porn film in 3D, and I was thinking in my seat, and because we're not that liberal here. If there was one complaint, we would be banned, and I didn't finish the screening, but I said this is too much stress for me. I cannot face the ambassadors after this, but thank God nobody complained, and there were two other screenings uncut. So that was my biggest nightmare. I said, wow, I will never show a film I haven't actually programmed and previewed.
Okay, okay. And what are your plans for this year's edition?
Lots of plans because it's our 10th year. So how do because the challenge I always have is how do I lure the people back to the theaters, and also keeping in mind our thrust. How do we promote Asian cinema, Philippine cinema? So I'm always on the lookout for the newest auteur, Filipino or Southeast Asian, that we can discover here. So I'm looking for the next Martika Ramirez. She had this short film at Sundance, Leonor Will Not Die, or we had a short film last year that won a big award in Berlin, Filipiniana, Rafi Manuel. So I'm looking forward to have their feature films or news short works that they have. So everybody's waiting what this new normal is for 2022. I mean, not just in QCinema, but for Busan, for Thessaloniki, or for Cannes or Tokyo. So we're all excited how this return to the bleak 2 years has been, and moving forward from that.
And how do you envision the future of the festival? Let's just say if it keeps up for 10 more years, what will happen? What would the best case scenario be?
Oh, I'd love to have more world premieres by Asian directors in QCinema. Of course, the business of world premiere, Asian premiere, Philippine premiere. It seems quite petty, but it's quite important for festivals as they get older, because it's an honor for an Asian director like Hamaguchi, for example, to have his film premiere in Southeast Asia in Quezon City in QCinema. So that's one of my dream to be one of the majors, slowly but surely, at least within Southeast Asia, and inviting more foreign directors here to come and have a Q&A, not just a red carpet, without slapping one another. What happened in Oscars, no? No, joke. But having them here as guests and showing a retrospective or a focus on Greek cinema, new weird Greek type of programming. I'd love to have more leeway to have those sections.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess that's it. I'm out of questions. Thank you very much, Ed Lejano, for your time, and good luck with your festival this year. And okay, I'm Panos Kotzathanasis, and this was Asian Movie Pulse Interviews. Thank you once more, and see you soon. Bye.
And thank you, Panos.